top of the morning, everybody, and welcome to The Sweat presented by DraftKings, a show we've been bringing you for years now. But today marks the start of an entirely new era. Mama, we've made it. We are bringing you best bets and DFS plays from around the sports world for 2 full hours, 8 o'clock Eastern Time to 10 o'clock Eastern Time, not only on DraftKings Network, but now on VSiN Saturday and Sunday mornings, so newish look, same great taste. Am I right, gentlemen? Julian Edlow, Steve Buchanan, how we feeling, boys?
It's the start of a new era, like you said. Something new we're going to be doing all throughout the year. We're really looking forward to it.
Football's back.
Yes.
That's how I feel, and we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, big week for us here, as well as we are launching Gojo and Golic on Monday with Jesse Cofield. We've got only the good stuff lined up for everybody here for the next 2 hours, starting with some NFL moneymakers here, Bukes. Final weekend of preseason action.
Yeah.
We are inside it right now. What, if anything, has you rethinking NFL bets down the road?
Yeah, look, I don't take a lot of stock into what we see during the preseason. We're seeing a lot of guys who are, really on the bubble for making the roster or whatnot. But if there's actually been one person who has impressed me through the preseason in his limited action, it's been Kenny Pickett. I think he's looked really good in the preseason thus far. 15 pass attempts, 13 completions, 199 yards, 2 touchdowns through those games. He's getting a lot of praise during the summer and in camp too. The Steelers have said they really want to kind of balance out that offense, and that's something that Kenny Pickett has also echoed himself as well. Pittsburgh was one of the lowest scoring teams in the league last year. They were averaging just 18.1 points per game. That ranked 26th in the league. If Pickett makes that next step, the Steelers, I think, are going to be a very good team that, going down the stretch of the season.
Jules, what's your bettors take away from all the preseason games and camp storylines that we've seen up to this point?
Yeah, I would say beware of what we saw and also beware of what we didn't see. And it's funny Steve mentioned that. I think that Kenny Pickett is in a good position to take a step forward. Yeah. There's no reason he shouldn't, and he showed us that in preseason. He has a guy like George Pickens that was a steal of the second round, it looks like, last year, and could be an elite receiver. But, again, I said beware of what we saw. Some of that came against first string. The large bulk of that came against second string. So while we've seen nothing to say that Pickett won't have a good season with that Pittsburgh offense, we also have seen it against guys that he's not going to be playing against in the regular season. Right. So he's not going to be 13 for 15 with 2 touchdowns and no picks once he starts going up against the first string 49ers defense in week 1. So I would say, watch for a little bit of a step back from what we saw in preseason.
Okay.
And beware of what we didn't see. The Patriots. Mac Jones barely played because the Patriots are afraid to put him behind an offensive line that they think he could get injured in. So I think, expecting something there, I would expect the Patriots to be in trouble when they put him there because they were nervous to play him in preseason. So what's it going to look like in the regular season? So
didn't look hot last night against the Titans.
Yeah, a lot of the things that we didn't see in preseason were for a reason.
All right, so nobody's putting Kenny Pickett in the Pro Bowl based on a few preseason drives. I'm picking up what you're putting down. So we're 2 weeks out now from week 1, Jules. Overall betting strategy with, again, 2 weeks to play.
Yeah, honestly, don't go nuts. Like, this board has been open since, May?
Yeah.
The betting board for NFL.
Yes.
There's so long to consume content, so long to stare at the board, so long to come up with bets. Don't start betting on every game. Don't start betting on all these props just because it's on the board. You still want to whittle it down to your strongest spots, the spots where you have the most confidence. Just because it's sitting there for so long, and we still have 2 weeks, twice as long as we get during each week during the season to bet on these games, to talk ourselves into more games based on what we saw in preseason. So take it easy, and then, as we always say,
take it easy, man.
What does happen in week 1? Don't start going crazy on week 2 based off of that one thing. So let's ease into the season, guys.
Okay, do you echo what Jules just said?
Yeah, and you got to realize, too, obviously we have the NFL preseason, but you're not seeing a lot of these starters play in these games. Like we just talked about, Mac Jones barely seeing the field because, they're really worried about that offensive line in front of him. He took a couple of sacks, and I think it was week 2, and they don't want him to get injured there, too. But also, we love betting overs. Historically, unders have played very well in week 1. This is where a lot of the teams are, aside from practices or joint practices during the season, this is their real first in-game action for a full game too. So that's why the under over the past like 20 or so years has hit about 53% of the time in week 1. So, books are adjusting for that. But I think that's one of those things that, football's here. People are excited. They want to see some overs. But historically, the under has been the play during these week 1 games.
These joint practices have started looking more like hell in a cell, man.
Absolutely.
Fights, just
Absolutely.
dudes throwing down. Speaking of betting, let's punch up the splits right now on the DK Sportsbook for Super Bowl and conference winner here. Look at the Jets, Steve.
Yeah.
Pulling in the most money to win the NFL championship. How big of an overreaction is this? There's Hard Knocks. There's all the Aaron Rodgers hype. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is a classic team that would end up being a letdown, right? Like, the odds are fairly long for how much the Jets have done to basically overhaul that entire team. I mean, when that team takes the field for week 1, you're not even going to recognize that team from what we saw last year. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is a massive upgrade, but this almost kind of feels like the Packers East, right? Because he has a lot of the guys that he's played with before on the Packers on this team now. So they're going to be a good team without a doubt. I don't think that I'm betting them to win it all here, and especially at 12% of the handle. I mean, that is the play right now, at least of what the public thinks, which is tied with the Bengals, who I'd be more inclined to side with, because I think that's a team that could actually really go to the Super Bowl here. So I think this is just one of those. It's a public darling. This is where the public is going, but I'm not siding with them in this instance.
Yeah, Joel, same amount of cash being pulled in by the Bengals. More bets. Would you rather back Cincy to hoist the Lombardi?
I would definitely rather back Cincy because we've seen it from them. And this is classic overreaction, the Hard Knocks hype. Who was the team bet the most in a 24-hour span after Hard Knocks debuted to win the Super Bowl on DraftKings Sportsbook? The New York Jets.
Yep. That
Makes
was an Aaron
sense.
Rodgers Love Fest episode 1.
They're making them look pretty good, and they are very good on paper. But we need to see it play out on the field. They're in a very strong division. They're in a very strong conference. And I was really hoping this win total was going to open at 10.5 so I could go under. I'm right on the fence at 9.5. But I think that this team is going to have growing pains despite all the talent that they have. And we're going to see that at points in time, and we're potentially going to see that at home on Monday Night Football in Week 1 hosting the Bills.
Well, Jules, which market are you taking advantage of, like right now here, like on the DK Sportsbook? Because like maybe the price seems a little off. Can be on the DK Sportsbook, or if you want to take us to DFS on DraftKings, you can do that too.
I will stick with the sportsbook here, but I'm not going to go with a specific market. I'm actually going to go with a specific team. A team being priced as the worst team in the NFL, that would be the Arizona Cardinals. Win total set at 4.5. They are priced everywhere to be the worst team in the NFL. I think they might be overvalued. I have seen people that I trust that do power rankings. I'm not smart enough to do that. But they went down to 3.5? All right, they're down to 3.5. They are power rating out as a team that grades with the winless Cleveland Browns team, the winless Detroit Lions team. This has the potential, with no Kyler Murray and the guys that they have lost, DeAndre Hopkins, to be one of the worst teams in the last 20 years. And what really put me over the edge is you see this week, they're taking any starter level player that they don't think they can retain and trading them to other teams. Isaiah Simmons to the Giants. They're taking offensive lineman starters and moving on from them to the Houston Texans, another team that is supposed to be very poor. So I think early in the season, Arizona is a team you want to be fading. And you saw off that news of all the trades the other day against the Washington Commanders, a team with a win total of 6.5. They moved from 6 to 7-point underdogs. This team is going to be dreadful, and I want to take advantage of it early before it gets out of hand.
Pierce, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the Lions might be getting a little too much hype coming into this season
Agreed.
thus far. I mean, for them to make the playoffs right now, yes, is at minus 165. Like, that just feels like a pretty lofty number for a team that, to be fair, did play very well, especially near the end of the season. But, do we really think that this team is complete enough that they can actually sustain this for the entire year, make the playoffs, especially at that number that you're given? So right now, the no is set at plus 140. That feels like the better play at this point in time. If they end up making the playoffs and I'm wrong about this, then so be it. But, at this point, for them to be at minus 165 to make the playoffs, that just feels really lofty for me at this point. And they're another team. Like the Jets are a very, public team that people like. The Lions are another team that I think are getting a lot too much hype coming into this year. So I think right now getting the no on them to make the playoffs at plus 140, I think that's the play right now.
What about this early on, Steve? What's the move with trying to find some value in the land of DFS?
Yeah, I mean, look, rookies are always the early season value, especially in week 1 here.
Yeah, because most of the time, most of the guys you see playing.
Right, of course. But if you look at last year, Chris Olave for the Saints was priced at $4,500 for the first 3 weeks of the season. After that, he never saw his salary dip under $5,500 starting in week 4, and he reached as high as $6,800 through weeks 9 and 11. So if you kind of take that mentality and looking in week 1 for daily fantasy, Zay Flowers is somebody who really kind of gets that boat of confidence for me here. He's at 4,000 this week too. Yep, he's playing very well on the opposite side of Odell Beckham Jr. if he can stay on the field. But Flowers seems like he's going to be an immediate impact player for the Ravens. So I think that's something you really want to take a look at.
All right, Jules, quickly.
I'm taking what I saw in the betting market and just translating it right to DFS. Fade the Cardinals. And who gets the Cardinals in week 1? That is the Commanders. At home, new ownership, looking to make a statement. Do I think the Commanders are going to be good this season? No. Do I think things are going to look good week 1 at home against Arizona? Yes. Sam Howell gets the nod at starter. He's only $4,900 on DraftKings. And if Terry McLaurin is injured, he has that toe, if he doesn't play week 1, now you're getting cheap receivers to go with him. I think that could be a very cheap stack that does very well for us in week 1.
All right, well, coming up, I know college football is finally here, right? We're going to go from week 0 to hero. Playoff implications already on the line. Jules, want to see which teams you are backing today, plus a potential Heisman dark horse. But first, we're going to take a trip around the diamond here with less than 6 weeks left in the regular season. Wild card races are wild. What's going on with Shohei Ohtani? We'll talk about it next. just so you know. That music gets me fired up, baby. The baseball world receiving some really crummy news this past week as Shohei Ohtani, the most brilliant baseball player we've seen in generations, will not pitch again the rest of the season because of tearing his UCL, Steven. So the end of an era rapidly approaching for the Angels, who really have little to show for it despite this man's heroics, and then Mike Trout too, who, came off the IL for 5 minutes.
2 days.
And then went right back onto it. How does this Shohei Ohtani injury change the American League MVP race?
Yeah, so it's not currently available on DraftKings
Yeah.
Sportsbook right now, but we're talking about, it's August 26th. We're talking about maybe a little bit over a month left in the season.
Yeah.
I don't really think that changes much. I think Ohtani has done more than enough to take home this award, and he's still going to be hitting, so he's still going to be making an impact on offense. But it's crazy to think though that we're even talking about this because he's basically had this wrapped up since early June. It feels like at this point.
So no one, in your opinion, could catch up to him, really?
The only person I would maybe consider is Corey Seager on the Texas Rangers. He's been absolutely absurd. He's hitting .345, 24 home runs, 77 RBI, and a 5.2 WAR, which is actually the second best in the league. But what makes it so impressive is he's done this through 84 games. He missed a ton of time, and he's still 10th in home runs, second best WAR in the league right now. It's insane to think how good he's been in that short amount of time, but unfortunately for him, Ohtani has just absolutely raked the entire season, both on the mound and at the plate.
Yeah, and at the plate, he goes 1 for 2 last night against the Mets. How complicated does his free agency become now, though? Because he hits the open market here in 10 weeks.
Yeah, it's kind of insane because obviously this is, you're not getting that two-way player right now because he has to get Tommy John surgery, so he's not going to be able to pitch, but he should be able to come back fairly soon to hit. We kind of saw that with Bryce Harper last year. Came back, his power was still there, everything was still good for Harper.
We saw this the first time around too with Shohei, where he basically just hit for a year and didn't play.
Right, exactly. So you're still getting an elite hitter, but obviously when you're trying to get Ohtani, you're trying to get the whole shebang here. So that's obviously something that's not going to happen, but I still think somebody's going to shell out a boatload of money to get them on his services for the years to come.
So you believe this signals the end of his time with the infuriating?
Oh, without a doubt. Get away from that franchise. That franchise has done nothing but bad for you. Get away from the Angels.
All right, well, talking today's slate here. Red Sox, Dodgers have really been going in opposite directions since that 2018 World Series. You can take a look at just some of the numbers here on your screen. Last night, Steve, LA gets the series opening win in Boston. Mookie gets that standing ovation, well-deserved in his return to Fenway. He sparked the Dodgers comeback. Fun start to the game with Alex Verdugo. We want to talk about the definition of irony. He was part of that Mookie Betts trade. He goes yard to start the game. What's a bet in this one today that you were looking at?
I think we're going to get a lot of offense here tonight. So I think over 10 runs is going to be the play in this one here at -105. Dodgers are one of the best teams against left-handed pitching. They have a WRC plus of 121 against lefties. Boston is just outside the top 10 against lefties, 112 WRC plus for them. Julio Urias has been absolutely absurd on the road. 6.80 ERA, 10 of the 18 home runs he's allowed. And James Paxton right now in the midst of his worst month as a Red Sox, ERA over 5.5 over that span, 4.14 WAR against him in the month of August. I think the Dodgers are going to have an easy time with him this afternoon or tonight, I think it is. So I think over 10 runs is the play for that game tonight.
Yeah, I think around 4 o'clock Eastern time for Dodgers, Red Sox there. And Dodgers running away with the West again. Their starting rotation is much healthier now compared to earlier in the year. Red Sox are kind of fading. They're just barely staying above ground here because they're losing a lot of ground to America's team, the Seattle Mariners. Look at the playoff odds movement here. July 1st, plus 650 to make the postseason. Now, I checked this morning on the DK Sportsbook, Steve, -400, yes, to make the playoffs. So when you look in this department, though, on the DraftKings Sportsbook, whose odds do you like right now?
The National League wild card is going to be so insanely fun for the last month because there's 6 teams that are legitimately in the running for those 3
all
wild
within
card spots.
5.5 games of each other.
Exactly. Arizona Diamondbacks, I think, are going to be that team that will end up sneaking into that 3rd wild card spot. I think they're even money as of right now to make that wild card spot, but they're in contention with a bunch of other teams. The Giants, the Reds, the Miami Marlins are in there too as well, but I really like the Arizona Diamondbacks. They're a very complete team, in my opinion. They have a good offense. They have a good rotation. They have their Mariners' old closer, Paul Sewald, closing out games now. That's something they really needed throughout the year. So I think that's a team that's going to start going on a run. They've been playing much better as of lately as well, and they have a good schedule to end the year. I think the Diamondbacks are going to sneak in. You're getting even money on that right now. I think that's definitely the play.
Yeah, Diamondbacks, yes, to make the playoffs, minus 140 on the DK Sportsbook. No, plus 115. Diving into today's slate like a little more here, Steve. A DFS hitter you like. Let's work in some fantasy chatter.
Yeah, let's go to the Baltimore Orioles. Austin Hayes going up against former Mariner pitcher Chris Flexen, who has a 428 WOBA and 14 of the 19 home runs he's allowed against righties on the year. Flexen has been absolutely terrible when he's been on the mound. He's already allowed 6 home runs through just 22 innings in the month of August. He has 20 hits in the month of August. I'm talking about Austin Hayes here. 11 of them have gone for extra bases. I don't know why Flexen is still a major league pitcher at this point, but let's be thankful for that and roster all those Baltimore Orioles hitters that we can get. Austin Hayes, not a huge name on there, so you'd expect from the Orioles, but he has some good numbers against righties, and Flexen obviously very poor against righties himself, so I think he's a great play here tonight.
Orioles have had a hell of a season. I believe already hit their preseason win total mark.
They were the first team to do that, yep.
All right, DFS pitcher, talk to me, Goose.
Staying in that same game, Kyle Bradish, 9,000 going up against the Rockies. The Rockies have been one of the worst road offenses in the league. They have come into this game with a WOBA of just 287. That's the second worst in the league on the road. You look at Bradish, he has been one of the more underrated pitchers for not only just the Orioles, but I feel like in the American League. 2.47 ERA and a 257 WOBA during the second half of the season. He's been one of the unsung heroes for that Baltimore Orioles rotation. Going up against this Rockies offense that I mentioned really struggles on the road. This is a huge spot for him tonight. I think he does very well against the Rockies here tonight.
And generally this translate to a player prop in the DK Sportsbook. Not always. Who do you like in the props department?
Yeah, going for Luis Robert over 1.5 bases. You're getting that at minus 110. He's going up against a lefty, which is always the matchup you want to target with Robert when he's going up against a lefty. He's hitting 309 against him with a 408 WOBA and a 163 WRC+. They're going up against the Oakland Athletics. JP Sears has taken the mound for the Athletics. To be fair, he's actually been one of the Athletics' one of their better pitchers on the year, but he gives up a ton of home runs. 28 home runs allowed on the year, 23 of them going to right-handed bats. With how well Luis Robert hits lefties, this is a huge spot for him. Going over 1.5 bases, he has so much power against lefties. That's the matchup. That's the player prop you want to target here tonight.
I mean, how disappointing have the White Sox been this season?
Oh, it's absolutely insane.
Cleaned house, too, in the front office.
Clean house everywhere.
Yeah.
To start that team over, they just need a complete reset.
All right, so in terms of game total, which one really catches your eye right now in the DK Sportsbook for today?
Yeah, so we got the Cardinals and the Phillies. I like that game to go under 9 runs tonight at minus 115. Cardinals could be without Nolan Arenado. Left the game early yesterday. Now they're going up against Zach Wheeler, who's been the Phillies' best pitcher by far all season long. The second half of the season specifically, Wheeler has been on point. 2.89 ERA, only 15 total runs allowed through 46 and 2/3 innings. The thing that really caught my eye, though, is both of these teams really struggle at hitting the over. Both of these teams have been under 50% on the year. St. Louis Cardinals only hitting the over 48% of the time, while the Phillies are at 46% of the time, so even worse there. But when you take into consideration that the Cardinals are likely going to be without one of their better hitters, you got Zach Wheeler on the mound for the Phillies. Dakota Hudson has been really kind of a mixed bag for the Cardinals, but I think this game is going to go under 9 runs. That just feels like a lofty total for these two teams today.
Yeah, and Philly right now hanging on to that top wild card spot in the National League, getting hot when it matters the most. Arizona and the Cubs rounding out those 3 teams in the wild card picture currently. So give me just a game bet you're really feeling. You woke up this morning and said, oh, that tickles my fancy.
Yeah, I think of the well, that's a weird way to put it, but I think the Baltimore Orioles on the run line minus 1.5 going up against the Rockies. I talked about it earlier. That matchup between Kyle Bradish and Chris Flexen, it's just not even close here. The Orioles have been the second best team on the run line in the league. They're 79 and 49 on the year. Only two teams in the league in total have hit over 60% of the time on the run line, the other team being the Cincinnati Reds. But like I mentioned, this pitching matchup is not even close. Chris Flexen really struggles in this spot. I think he gives up a lot of runs here, so I think this is going to be a spot here where you want the back the Orioles here on that run line, minus 1.5. I think they're in a really good spot here tonight.
And coming up, you will be building, I believe, a same-game parlay for the Mariners-Kansas City game, so you're feeling relatively confident in America's team. Just a little tease right now, right?
That's right.
All right, great. Fantastic stuff there. So for you watching at home, all of you, if you're craving more baseball, as I mentioned, we are going to bring you some of that. So we have Bobby Witt Jr. Do you know what one of the strengths of his game is?
Oh, his speed.
His
By
speed
far.
his speed is incredible,
Yep.
and he's making some serious Major League
Yep.
Baseball history. And we've brought people a little bit of Bobby Witt Jr. in his interview with Jared Carrabis a few weeks ago on our Tuesday edition of the Sweat Takeover, which you can watch live 11 o'clock Eastern Time Tuesday mornings, and then on the DraftKings network at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. What do you like the most about Bobby Witt Jr.'s game?
I mean, he's just such a complete player. I mean,
He really is.
He was one of the top prospects that came into the league last year. 3 of the top 5 prospects were called up on opening day. It was Spencer Torkelson, Bobby Witt. I just think this is a great spot for him, and just to see him grow in this game here.
All right, we're going to dive into that right after we dive into the Week 0 slate with Julian Edlow. A few ranked teams in action, his favorite futures in college football's year of goodbye. Welcome back, everybody, to our new weekend edition of The Sweat. You're watching us either on DraftKings Network, VSiN, DraftKings YouTube, Twitter, Twitch pages, you name it. We are everywhere. We make it very easy for you to watch us dish out, hopefully, successful college football bets.
Hopefully.
Week 0 is here. It's one of those end-of-era years, too, in college football. We're seeing a lot of rivalries going to die out, go away. Pac-12 is going to become the Pac-4. It is messy. We love it. Let's see what's cooking in that big, beefy betting brain of yours, including some DK Sportsbook futures you have your eyes on. So, 2 ranked teams among the 7 FBS versus FBS games today. Number 13, Notre Dame. Number 6, USC. Their quarterbacks and coaches are going to be the focus here, Jules. What is your bet du jour for Trojans and San Jose State?
Yeah, it'd be more fun if we were seeing those top 25 teams go head-to-head, but
It would
we
be
will
nice.
later in the season, actually. USC does play Notre Dame, but for USC, they're 31.5-point favorites. Total sits at 66.5, and it's only been flying up. I don't have a bet in this one that I'm making. If I had to do anything, it would be the over. It hurts to get a bad number, but we're here on game day now. This is a game that we should see some scoring. We know what USC is offensively with Caleb Williams, all those receivers, a ridiculous run game and offensive line. They will put up points in a game like this against San Jose State. But San Jose State has a little bit of offense too. And you remember USC struggled defensively last year. A big reason they were able to hang on in some of those games was their massive turnover margin. If they don't get those turnovers this year, that'll result in some scores for some of these lesser opponents like a San Jose State. So I think over in this game is the look.
Yeah, San Jose State with a veteran quarterback of its own. USC averaged nearly 51 points per game in their first 3 games of the season.
That'll help get you there.
Yeah. All right, so Heisman race is going to be quarterback heavy, as always, sticking with USC here as well. Caleb Williams, the favorite to repeat, plus 450. So, Jules, I think bettors went through like this repeat Heisman news cycle just last year, which may explain why the market is a little softer on Williams compared to Bryce Young last year.
Probably. It's really hard to do to win again.
Only one dude's won twice, right?
So Caleb Williams should be the favorite. He's in position to have the best season. I can't bet him because that number is just too low to bank on something that generally doesn't happen. And what if USC is going to be really good, but they have a tough schedule, and the Pac-12 in its last year has a ton of good competition. Oregon, Utah, Washington, Oregon State. What if USC drops 2 games and now they're at 10-2 and there's another perfect team out there? That has me looking at 2 teams that I think have the best chance to go perfect. That would be Georgia and Clemson. So if I'm looking a little down the board, we see Carson Beck and Cade Klubnik both getting their first year as starters, both at 14-1 to win the award. That's where I would start looking for a little bit of value rather than just 4-1 range for a guy like Caleb Williams.
And you went heavy on the ACC in your most recent Unreasonable Odds podcast, correct?
We went heavy on everything. We did
Love
the full hour with Phil Steele talking every Power 5 conference.
Okay, well, let's talk Notre Dame Navy today in Dublin. 3rd time these 2 teams have met in Ireland. Irish are pretty massive favorites here as they look to get the Sam Hartman era started with a bang. Doesn't mean you can't find value here, though, right?
Yeah, again, tough game, first game of the season, neutral site game, international, 2 teams that do know each other well because they play often. You'll remember, Navy went to Notre Dame last year. They were getting blown out at halftime. They came back and had a chance to win. They lost in South Bend by only 3 points. I think that Navy can find a way to keep this a game at 20.5. You want to see it go to 21. You'll probably get some public money coming in on the Irish and leading up to kickoff, which could get you there on the 21. So this would be a look at 21 or better for me on the Navy side. Also, I think this could be a slow start to the game. Again, international, first game of the season, week 0. Teams that know each other well, the new clock rules. The clock will run on first downs rather than stop. That's going to burn more clock. Navy obviously likes to run the ball. If they can put together drives, Navy can put together a 10, 12, 13-minute drive in the first half. I think an under on 24.5 or better in the first half could also be worth a look.
All right, Navy coach Brian Newberry making his debut in that classic rivalry, and we will talk more Notre Dame coming up and why you do not agree with the views of the Golics when it comes to Notre Dame's future.
They're very
in college
pro Notre
football.
Dame guys.
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
bring them down a little.
I wonder why. Anywho, UMass, New Mexico State. What stands out to you here on the DK Sportsbook?
Oh, yeah. You know it's week 0 when the primetime 7 o'clock game.
These are games built for sickos like you.
I'm a sicko. UMass, New Mexico State. These teams have played in 2021 and 2022. New Mexico State won by 10 on the road last year, and they won by 17 the last time they played at home in 2021 at New Mexico State. UMass did get better. I will preface it with that. UMass is better. New Mexico State is roughly the same as years past. But this is a team, again, they have the 2 double-digit wins over UMass. They have a dual-threat quarterback in Diego Pavia leading the way. I think he's going to have a good game at home yet again, and UMass just not quite ready to make that leap, especially in week 0 going on the road. So it's 7 now. It's been 6, 6.5. Anything better than 7, I will go with New Mexico State at home here.
Yeah, that offense really had zero life for UMass last year. Averaged 12.5 points per game.
Not
By
a
the way,
lot.
New Mexico State 4-1 ATS is a favorite last season as well.
There we go.
Hawaii and Vanderbilt. What do you like here? Come on, man. Let's go, Bows.
I got some hate in the office. We have a lot of Rainbow Warrior fans here. They wanna take the points. We saw how this went last year.
It was ugly last year.
14-7 game at halftime on the island. Hawaii hanging tough. Ooh, 63-10 final for Vandy. Remember, this team is in the SEC. They are at home. It's a long trip for Hawaii. I expect Vandy to break this one open again. 17 or better. I'll lay it with Vandy at home. I will say this because people love betting Hawaii. I don't mind coming back with Hawaii +7 on the island in week 1 when they host Stanford. I think that's the game where they can maybe get it together. But as far as week 0, it is Vandy or pass.
Hawaii is expected to be much improved in Timmy Chang's second season there. Looking down the road, looking into your crystal ball, who are you backing in the SEC?
I think this is LSU's year in the SEC. It was last year, and I didn't see that coming. They took the division. I think this is a team. The division price and the conference price and the win total have all been hit pretty hard. So this is a team that I just want to back in games. You know, you got them week 1 against FSU, about -140 on the money line. I like them there. And you got them going against a team I want to fade in the SEC.
Yes.
+7, that team, that game in Alabama, a team they beat last year. I'll just get into who I'm fading now.
Let's go.
Bama's -165 to miss the college football playoff. I don't know how this team's going to get above 10 wins, and we've never seen a 2-loss team in the college football playoff. They do get their tougher games at home, LSU, Texas, but I think they're going to want Tennessee as well. I think they're going to drop one of those, and then they could easily. They lost the last time they went on the road to Texas A&M, and they barely got by them in Tuscaloosa last season. Texas A&M +8 at home Saturday night game against Alabama in early October is also a look for me. I think there's a lot of ways you can fade Bama, but -165 to miss the college football playoff. Even if they lose one regular season game, if they lose that SEC championship game, they now have 2 losses. They're probably not getting in.
They're replacing 2 of the first 3 players selected in the 2023 NFL draft, both coordinators from a team that did not win the SEC West last season. So led by 2-time reigning champion here, Michigan, Big Ten is poised for another strong showing, it appears. Who grabs your attention in the futures market?
I think it's a little disrespectful to Michigan, still being 5 cents behind Ohio State last I looked in the conference odds. This is a team that has dominated the conference lately, and Michigan gets the home game. It's been the season finale. Michigan has won the season finale against Ohio State 2 years in a row and gone on to win the Big Ten championship game. Now they host it this year and are small favorites in that game. I think Ohio State has a better chance to slip up earlier in the season than Michigan does. Michigan has a pretty soft schedule. And then when it comes around to it, I like Michigan in that game at home on November 25th to wrap up the regular season. So Michigan to win the conference at +175, a good look. Iowa's a team I really like in the Big Ten that, like LSU, those futures have kind of been mashed over the course of the summer. But I think same as LSU, I'll take Iowa and back them early in the season. You got them in week 2 going against Iowa State in a rivalry game. A lot of murky situation for Iowa State with the gambling, so that could be a game where you look to them. And then for where I'm going against in the Big Ten, Northwestern, since playing in the Big Ten championship game against Ohio State, has won 4 total games. They beat Nebraska in a week 0 game last year and then lost 11 in a row. Now they have the whole hazing situation. They lose their head coach at 3 on that win total. This team's not going 4-8. You're either pushing at 3-9 or this team's winning 2 games or fewer and you're winning that bet. This is not a good season when you look at the schedule for Northwestern.
All right, very quickly here, Pac-12. Tell me why you are backing Washington.
Yeah, they were nasty last year. Got to 10-2. You got Penix coming back at quarterback. You got all the receivers coming back. This is going to be an offense that scores like 40-plus points per game. And the Pac-12 is ultra competitive. That's the only downside that I have here. But at like 4-1 to win the conference, and if you can get 9 wins flat, I don't see this team dropping to 8-4, even with a difficult schedule. They do have to play Utah and USC this time around. They didn't do that last season, but it's another year for this offense. I think they're going to score a ton of points and do very well this season.
Okay, you hang out because we need you to help break down the AFC West coming up. Which team is the biggest threat to dethrone the Chiefs? We also got a real-life baseball player joining the program. Bobby Witt Jr. sits down with former Little Leaguer Jared Carrabis next.
With the second selection for the 2019 MLB Draft, the Kansas City Royals select Bobby.
There goes Witt Jr. easily stealing second base.
Bobby destroys it. Deep left field. Way gone. 3-run shot. Bobby Witt Jr.
All right, we're here with Bobby Witt Jr. of the Kansas City Royals. I want to start off by saying congratulations. I don't know if you saw my tweet yesterday, but you've officially made it into my top 3 favorite players in the league.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's huge.
Thank
That's
you.
big time. I mean, Nolan Arenado has had like a firm grasp on like that top 3 for like the last like 5-6 years, but you've cracked the top 3. And another congratulations to you because you are one of one. You are the first player in Major League history to start off your career back-to-back seasons, 20 homers, 30 stolen bases. Does that even like register in your head? Like I've done something that no one else in this game has ever done?
I think the more and more it's kind of been talked about, and then it's an honor. Just anytime you get to be the first of something in this game, I think just thinking of it that way, it's truly just a blessing. It's just like my dad told me, like this, just take it all in, just experience it, take it, and then just enjoy it. But also just keep getting better each and every day. Keep doing it, and just keep trying to do that each and every year.
Did you know as you were closing in on it that no one else had ever done it, or was it after you did it that they were like, "Oh, hey, by the way"?
Yeah, it's kind of after I did it. Whenever I was going into my next at bat, I was looking for my bat, and I was like, "Where's my bat?" And I knew it was my 20th homer, but I didn't know it was something like that. So then I found our clubby. He had my bat, and he goes, "You might not want to use this bat anymore."
yeah, this one might be going to the Hall of Fame. So, I mean, going back, because I went to message you today, and the last time that I messaged you was, I think I was congratulating you on getting called up to the big leagues for the first time. So you've been on my radar since the 2019 draft. You get taken in the first round, second overall, and going back to look at your high school numbers, senior year, you're hitting over 500. Like, You're a very humble guy. How do you manage that? Like how do you go through your professional and amateur baseball career having so much success immediately and be like, yeah, no, I'm just Bobby. It is what it is.
I think it's more so motivation, just because of you do this at a young age or whatever, and you're on this paper to be the top, this guy, this, you're supposed to be this or whatever, and so it's just motivation, just try to kind of almost prove it right, I guess, and just keep working, keep preparing each and every year, each and every day, just to try to get better. And that's my ultimate goal, just to try to never stop at just one thing. Don't really set too many goals, because you just want to try to make the sky's the limit each and every year. And so just try to live that mantra and just take it day by day, and not try to look too far ahead, not look in the past, and just enjoy every moment.
When you're hitting over 500, do you have like a 2-for-4 day and be like, I kind of sucked?
I don't really remember too much, like with the high school stuff. Really, we're just trying to my freshman, sophomore, and junior year, trying to win a state championship, fell short, and then the senior year, that was pretty much the goal. Yeah. And so that pretty much helped with everything, all the draft stuff, with the scouts in the stands, all that noise and everything. It just really, whenever I was just focusing on the team and everything, just trying to do my job, that's whenever I started playing well and just things started going well.
Everyone knows that you come from a line of Major League Baseball talent, but you're a position player. Pop's not the same. So who was your guy growing up where it's like, I'm sure your dad is your hero, but at the end of the day, you're a position player. So who was your guy that you were watching on TV being like, I want to be like that guy?
I grew up, well, oddly enough, Dustin Pedroia was my guy.
Okay.
That's why my Instagram handle, bwitter15, I always wore 15, and then Jeter was also my guy. So it's kind of funny growing up just with Red Sox, Yankees, kind of that stuff. And then I love watching Michael Young as well, just 3 guys that I kind of wanted to emulate my game around, and then that's why in high school and stuff I wore 17, 15, and 2, Jeter, Pedroia. So then those are the 2 jerseys I have hanging above my bed, autographed. So those are kind of my guys that I watch. They're both high energy guys on the field and did things, I think, right off the field as well.
Have you ever met Pedroia?
Yes, I have. Yeah, the first time we were out here. I can't remember how old I was. My dad represented him. He's a baseball agent, and so I think I was 8, and we were at some local Mexican restaurant around here, and I didn't think I took a bite of my food. I was at the end of the table. He's at the end of the table. I was just staring at him across. I was just.
So you met him as a kid?
Yes, yeah.
Have you met him as a big leaguer?
We've kind of texted back and forth just a little bit whenever made my debut, and then I'll get a birthday text, so which is awesome. I see that, and it's incredible seeing that. So yeah.
So as a guy that is so dynamic in terms of speed, power, and being able to hit for average and all that, what aspect of your game are you most proud of, because that's what you had to work the hardest at? Like I'm assuming, you know, you're working hard in the gym and everything, but some of the speed, when you're talking about being one of the fastest, if not the fastest player in the game, that's God-given. But what part of your game are you most proud of because you had to work the hardest at it?
I think it's just a little bit of everything, and then it comes down to the mental side as well. I think that's one of the guys that one of the things that a lot of guys, I think, either take for granted or they don't see. You playing 162 games. We're traveling around the whole United States, just playing each and every day, and just really just trying not to get caught up in the limelight and everything. Just go about your business, be prepared each and every day, and just have that same focus. But then also come to the field with the right mindset. But then also you have to be yourself off the field. That's why I kind of like to be, whenever I'm at home and everything, I'm Bobby, and then I kind of get on the bus, go to the field, then I'm Junior, and turn that on a little bit. And so that's kind of something that I've been just trying to flip the switch whenever, from being Bobby to Junior or whatever it is, and just trying to have that mentality. I think so. But also every part of the game, whether it's hitting, fielding, base running, all those things, I feel like you just always got to prepare. There's not really one thing that I feel like I'm satisfied with. I think they just got to keep working at all the tools.
Your dad has local roots. You grew up a Dustin Pedroia fan. If like making your, I guess, like Fenway debut last year, do you compartmentalize that? Like, are you able to come up here and be like, all right, like it's just another big league game and I need to focus? Or was part of you saying like, holy shit, like I'm playing at Fenway Park right now in the big leagues?
Definitely last year, just flying into Boston, getting to the hotel, and then
I saw you. I remember that.
Yeah.
I didn't get to talk to you, but I remember like I was on the other side and I was like, what's up?
yeah, just showing up to the field, hitting BP. It was just like, I don't know really how to describe it. It was one of those moments where making your debut, getting to play at home in front of the fan, like in Texas and everything, and then playing here was, I think, one of the top things. I still say, what's your favorite road stadium? Fenway Park, because I grew up going to the games. Grandparents got to come out here. They live about 20 minutes away, and then just a lot of family, friends, and just in the stands. So it was super surreal, and I just, like we talked about, I grew up a Red Sox fan with my dad being from here, so it was awesome.
How many tickets did you have to bug your teammates for that series?
It was actually nice because my dad's, or the family, they're all season ticket holders. So
Okay,
they're all Red Sox fans, but it was cool seeing them with Royals gear on and everything, so yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. How, the first time that you ever truly faced failure, when was it, and how do you think you handled it?
I think you face failure, whether it's I feel like in high school I went through it too, it just happened, just with losing games, whatever it was, not winning the state championship. But then in pro ball, it kind of hit you hard. And so it's like sometimes you feel like you want to change things. You have to, I got to do this, I got to do that. But then other times it's just you just got to learn through the failure. You just got to go through it. And I think that was the best thing for me. With last year, starting the year wasn't great to start the year and whatever that last year, and then this year same thing. Didn't start out great, few months, and then started getting things. And I think it's just really just settling in, just being myself, preparing, having a good routine, and then just trying to be ready for each and every day and just try to do my job to help the team.
When you're playing high school ball, you talk about playing like the state championship, you played Team USA, like you've played in highly competitive situations. Right now, Kansas City in a little bit of a rebuild right now. How do you stay focused when you look up at the standings and you're like, man, like we're not in it right now. Like I'm not playing for a division title right now, and that's frustrating. But how do you stay focused on your individual game when that really has to be the focus?
Yeah, it's kind of how I said earlier. Just try to just stay where you're at today. Not worried about yesterday. Not worry about tomorrow. Just focus on what can I do today to get myself better, help the team win today, and not really trying to. I'm not a big guy looking at stats, not looking at standings, nothing really. Just let those things play out, and whatever happens. You just got to control what you control. Try to be as worry-free as possible and just enjoy each and every moment. And so that's kind of how I'm trying to just go about it. And then as the wins stack up, they stack up, and just keep rolling.
All right, thanks to Jared on that one. You can get more of that baseball content every single Tuesday on YouTube and on the DraftKings Network. The Tuesday Takeover with Jared Carabas, myself, and Emerson. Julian Edlow is not on that show, but Jesse Cofield is, so make sure to tune in on that 11 a.m. Eastern. Okay, going off of that there, we're going to build a same-game parlay for the Royals and the Red hot Seattle Mariners. We're going to do a little same game parlay here. I'm going to start this off here with the Seattle Mariners -1.5. The Kansas City Royals have been the worst team on the run line all throughout the season. They're only covering 40% of their games on the run line. Like I mentioned, the Mariners have been red hot, one of the best records in the month of August. After that, we're going to go to a little bit of game props here. We're going to go for the Mariners to get over 4.5. Come on, Steve, you can use this thing. All right, we're maybe not going to do that. It's not going there. We're going to go to total bases, and we're going to go down to J.P. Crawford, over 2 bases for J.P. Crawford, just back into the lineup recently. He has been doing phenomenal. Jordan Lyles really struggles against lefties, 345 WOBA against lefties. We're going to do this on the fly because it wasn't working here, so why don't we do this? Why don't we go down to Julio Rodriguez? We'll give him 2 bases as well. He has been literally one of the hottest hitters in baseball. Get all that together. That is at plus 475. That's your same game parlay for today. We're going to go do a AFC West preview when we come back here on The Sweat on the DraftKings Network. And VSiN with Emerson and Julian, myself, we'll be right back.
1 hour down, one more to go here, folks, on this new edition of The Sweat presented by DraftKings every Saturday and Sunday on DraftKings Network and VSiN. We are bringing you this brand spanking new program, Best Bets, top DFS plays, breaking down the top storylines, cooking around the sports world. These two dudes are here to help you make some money. That's
Hopefully.
Julian Edlow on the right.
Yeah, we hope so.
Steve Buchanan on the left. I'm Emerson Latzia. So big moment for you two here as we are kicking off our NFL division previews. We're going to start in the AFC West. This was supposed to be a juggernaut of a division last season, home on the reigning Super Bowl champion Chiefs. We all know how that turned out. Who, by the way, have conquered, Steven, the last 7 AFC West titles. Any reason to not back them, making it 8 straight?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's any reason to not think that there. Obviously, there's going to be more competition here. I mean, I really like the Los Angeles Chargers. We'll talk about them in a few minutes here. Not too high on these two teams here, but, you know, you talk about some of the guys that they lost during the offseason. You know, no more Mecole Hardman, no more Juju Smith-Schuster, but I think that's a good thing here because we're going to see more Sky Moore. We're going to see more Kadarius Toney if he can stay healthy. They did improve their pass rush during the draft, too. That was something they really needed to address, so I like what they did there. So, I mean, really, when you have Patrick Mahomes under center, it's hard not to back that team, but, you know, like you said here, this was supposed to be a competitive division last year. Maybe not so much this year, but I do like Los Angeles a lot coming into this season.
Jules, what do you think, man?
I am comfortable laying the minus 165 for Kansas City to win this division, and I actually like the division. The Chargers seem to let down year after year. Steve will, I guess, tell you why he likes them. I'll tell you why I like Denver, and we'll get to that later. But
here we go.
We said the 7 years in a row. All 5 years, Mahomes has been the starting quarterback in the division. Kansas City has won. They've won 12 or more games in 6 of those 7 years in a row that they've won it. They're just so far, like, this is turning into the Patriots in the AFC East and all those dynasties, but they are not quite priced there yet. Until that starts with a 2, I'm still probably going to be looking at these Mahomes, Andy Reid teams to win the division.
Well, the AFC West belongs to the Chiefs until someone takes it from them, Jules. And a lot of people believe it could be the Chargers who, like, in theory, you could make an argument, right, that LA has a better roster from like 1 to 53 than the Chiefs. How do you feel about their odds?
They're a deep team. They're an appropriately priced team. Like, with the talent they have, that minus 125 to make the postseason should be a comfortable bet. But they are the Chargers, and they seem to fall apart at the wrong times. Look, I'm afraid to go one way or the other. You see, they were 10-7 last year. They're going to be in that neighborhood again. Can they make that jump into 11-12 wins? I'm not going to bet the Chargers one way or another. I'm going to use a player prop here for a bet for the Chargers. Rookie Quentin Johnson. I don't play many overs on season-long player props. 575.5 receiving yards on the season. This dude, if you watch college football at TCU, a deep threat, a big physical receiver, a lot of attention on Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, guys that get hurt a lot, and then we have to have guys fill in. Well, they got a guy that can fill in Quentin Johnson. He's been a beast in camp. You see him catching deep balls, and this offense is built to go deep with Herbert. I think this guy is going to have big chunks in his rookie season. A couple 100-yard games maybe mixed in there, and 575 is going to look pretty silly.
Hey, Jules, we didn't get to it in the first block, but you kind of just reminded me to ask you again, why?
So I'm reminding you to do your job.
Yes, exactly,
Right.
Which is why I love you and why we make such a great duo. Why right now do you not take many overs in the player props like department season long right now? Is it because of injuries? That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for the question, Emerson. So in the season-long department, there's just so many more ways to win an under than an over. You can win an under by injury. It's the NFL. Guys, not even if it's not season ending, you miss a month here with an ankle, you're probably not going to hit your total. Different things can happen to the depth charts. You can have, if you're betting any skill position player over and the quarterback gets hurt, if Justin Herbert gets hurt and you're now on the backup, your receivers, your running backs, they aren't going to be looking as good. So there's just so many more ways that you can cash an under than an over. So if you're going to play an over, you have to feel really comfortable in that number.
And Bukes, I know I heard you grunt like a gorilla earlier when Julian mentioned how like the Chargers just have this habit of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. I mean, I think that's why many people are relegating them to wild card status again this year.
And that's fine, but like this is going to be the most different Chargers team I think we've seen in the past few years with Justin Herbert under center. Obviously, the new offensive coordinator Kellen Moore is going to make a huge difference here. They're really going to open up Justin Herbert to go downfield, and that's something we haven't really seen from him. It's always going to be in the just like these dink and dunk plays. That being said, they did struggle against teams with a winning record last year. They're only 1-5 against teams with a winning record last year. But Justin Herbert is coming into the season healthy. That has been the most important thing for me, is that Justin Herbert is healthy. We have the new receiver on the team there to go along with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler. There's 4 legitimate weapons for them on offense. So now you're telling me for them to go over their win total, they only need to match what they did last year with all of the additions, the change in offensive coordinator. I like that bet a lot. I think they're going to get at least 10 wins this year. I think that's a win total, one less than it should be. I would be more inclined to take the under if it was at 10.5, so give me the over on 9.5.
And Kellen Moore taking over duties as the offensive coordinator and play caller there in LA. As for the Broncos, like second straight season here, gentlemen, though, that they are entering the year with lofty expectations. So, Jules, are you living with a short memory when it comes to betting them and possibly buying into them despite last year's disaster?
I am going to have a short memory here with the Denver Broncos. Last season crashed and burned right from the start. You get that Monday night primetime game. Russell Wilson back in Seattle. Of course they lose, and then everything spirals out of control. Things are going to be different this time around, I think. 5-12 is about as bad as things can get. However, 4-9 in one-score games.
Yeah.
5 losses by a field goal or less. If you can be on the other side of some of those coin flips, you are going to be much better. And I think with Sean Payton instead of Nathaniel Hackett, they are going to be on the correct side of some of those coin flips. Denver's win total is 8.5. I am playing over 8.5. And you can buy it. You can buy wins on DraftKings Sportsbook.
Yep.
You can buy it to 7.5 for -160. That's a pretty cheap buy for a full win, going only 50 cents there. So I like that as well. If you look at the look-ahead lines, we have a number for every game this season posted on DraftKings Sportsbook. Denver's favored in 10 of those games, so if you want to go that route, they should get there. And I like the start here. Last year, they started with that disappointing loss in Seattle, and things got out of control. You cannot ask for a better way to start your season than hosting the Raiders and then hosting the Commanders. This team should go 2-0. They should be feeling much better about themselves. They're better coached. The injury bug has bit them early at wide receiver. Hopefully Jerry Jeudy is back soon. But I think that good start is going to propel them into a much better season and stay on the right side of some of those coin flip games.
All right, Steve, much better season, but better enough to hang with the Chiefs and Chargers?
I mean, no, and that's why I'm not taking a win total. I'm not taking them to make the playoffs. I'm actually banking on Russell Wilson to go over 4,000 passing yards this year. It's at plus 175. That seems like a pretty fair price there for somebody who was only 476 yards under that number last year. I think we have this perception that offensive line was really bad. And to be fair, Russell Wilson, tied for the league in sacks last year, would make you think that. But
nobody had more injuries last year than the Broncos.
Exactly.
A lot of it was on the offensive line.
And that's really where my point was going here, too. They did make some upgrades. Power McGlinchey is on this team, too, to help at guard and right tackle. And obviously, Sean Payton, I think, is going to be a godsend here for Russell Wilson. So for a number that he was really just under last year, to get 175 for him to go over 4,000 passing yards, I think that's a really good bet to make if you're going to be backing something on the Broncos.
Bukes, let's tackle the Raiders here before we wrap things up. I'm sure this will have all of our friends watching on VSiN out in Vegas jumping for joy here. But I don't know, 5 wins may be a high projection for him, huh?
I mean, I wish there was a bet where you could bet how many quarterbacks would play this year, because I'd take over 1.5 any day at any price.
Well, there is a bet. That would be Jimmy Garoppolo under 3,300 passing yards.
But that's where I'm going.
All right, there you go.
They're already managing like his practice reps for crying out loud.
Good job setting that bet up because you made me guess it.
Yes, because that's exactly where I'm going here. Under 3,300 passing yards and a half passing yards for Garoppolo. I mean, you look at the numbers from last year with San Francisco. In 11 games, which had 10 starts, he was averaging 221 passing yards per game. And that was with a much better offensive line in front of him. He is not going to have that same offensive line in front of him here with the Las Vegas Raiders. And then when he's under pressure, he is absolutely dreadful. He completed only 57% of his pass attempts when under pressure for 5 yards per attempt. This is not going to be a good year for the Raiders. I do not like Jimmy Garoppolo at all. I don't like backing him in any sense or thing here. So give me under 3,300 passing yards. The under is the play here because, quite frankly, I don't think he's going to be on the field for the entire season.
Jules, no sign of running back Josh Jacobs either. And Josh McDaniels, let's not forget, leading a team that set a new NFL record for blown double-digit second-half leads last year.
brutal coaching, brutal defense, an untrustworthy offense outside of Devontae Adams, and the Patriots gift-wrapped it a win for them last year to get to 6-11. Chiefs are Super Bowl contenders. They're going to win 12-plus games again. Chargers should get to double digits. I'm high on the Broncos. That leaves an obvious answer here. To finish fourth in the division, the Raiders are minus 150. That is my bet here. I don't know about the win total, 6.5. I would play under if you made me, but I just don't see how this is not the worst team in the division unless one of those other three teams gets absolutely devastated by injuries, and I don't think that's going to happen to Denver 2 years in a row with the new coach under Sean Payton. So easy one for me here. Favorite bet in the division. Raiders minus 150 to finish dead last.
All right, where do you stand on Chiefs making the Super Bowl here, real quick?
Chiefs making the Super. I mean, I would say no because the odds are against that, but
Okay.
they certainly deserve to be priced as the favorites.
Okay, Steven.
I don't think they make it this year. I mean, I think they're a deep team. They're an amazing team overall, but I think a lot of teams really made some strong upgrades this year,
Yeah.
and they should be in that conversation as well.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. We'll add some international flavor to the show coming up. Jeff Ulrich, our neighbor to the north, is going to tell you who he's backing the third round of the Tour Championship. Right after we break down Notre Dame's upcoming season with Jess Matana of the Gola Kitsmeti podcast, what the Irish must do in order for this season to be considered a success. Welcome back to The Sweat, everybody, where we've already talked some college football, but do not worry. We've got more in us. Time to break down what seems to be our adopted alma mater now, thanks to Gojo Mike Sr. And of course, our very good friend Jessica Smetana. Welcome to the Sweat, Jess. A major career accomplishment for you. How are you?
I love that we are slowly turning DraftKings into a Notre Dame homer network. It seems like it's working because I'm here.
Sign me up. And you know what, Jess? Hardly a day goes by in college athletics now where conference realignment is not the top story, the topic of conversation. But there's one thing we can count on, and that's Notre Dame's independence. Whether they're eventually going to go full-time ACC or maybe complete the Big 19. Give us your overall takeaway on the latest realignment news.
I find it a little disheartening as a fan of a lot of other college sports because we have completely thrown geography out the window.
Yeah.
I think that the moves from the USC and UCLA to the Big Ten was pretty much the death knell for anyone who thought like, maybe, traveling cross country mid-season for players on teams outside of football, not really the best situation, but now we've completely forgot any of that matters. And I think Notre Dame's actually ends up in a pretty good spot after all of this, as long as they're able to get a big contract from NBC or another TV network in the future. But it is a little sad. I do think it's a little strange, and I'm not really sure what to expect over the next 5 years now that we have two mega conferences and a pretty big Big 12, and then the ACC just kind of sitting there while their member teams, universities try to maybe revolt or maybe add Cal and Stanford. Yeah. It's just a very bizarre landscape right now.
It really is a bizarre landscape. SEC just loaded as always, and that's where in the offseason, at least, Tyler Buchner, he took off for Alabama here. Sam Hartman is now in from Wake Forest under center there for your Irish. How excited are fans right now with the addition of this 24-year-old seasoned veteran?
Yeah, I think fans are really, really excited for Sam Hartman. He threw for 110 touchdowns at Wake Forest. He's got over 12,000 yards as a college football player. He broke almost every record that exists at Wake Forest and in the ACC as the starter at Wake Forest for 4 or 5 years. He's been there a long time, like you mentioned. He's a seasoned veteran. So fans are really excited. As far as Tyler Buchner is concerned, after Sam Hartman was taken out of the portal and joined Notre Dame, there was not really a good enough reason for Tyler Buchner to stick around in his mind. So he went down to Alabama, where former offensive coordinator for Notre Dame and former Notre Dame quarterback Tommy Rees will be coaching along Nick Saban this season. But it does not look like Tyler Buchner is going to be starting. He looks like he's either second or maybe third on the depth chart at Alabama. So not sure if we'll get to see any Tyler Buchner this season at Alabama, which is a huge bummer because I think a lot of fans at Notre Dame really appreciated him and were sad to see him transfer.
So does Hartman and now new OC in South Bend, Jared Parker, is this duo enough to take Notre Dame from this middle of the pack team to the top of college football?
I would say they're not a middle of the pack team per se. They're very much a solid above average team. They won 9 games last season. They're definitely expected to make a bowl game and hopefully win 10 games. I think that would be the benchmark. They have a tough schedule. They're playing against 3 preseason top 10 teams in Clemson and USC and Ohio State. But I think Gerard Parker, like you mentioned, is kind of the question mark. He did not seem to be Notre Dame's first choice to be promoted into the offensive coordinator position after Tommy Rees left. They did dabble with Andy Ludwig, who's the offensive coordinator at Utah, for a while in the offseason, and it looked like he might be coming to South Bend, but then ultimately decided to stay at Utah. So I think that offensive coordinator position is a little bit of a question mark, and that was certainly a position, a group that struggled a little bit last year because of some of the lack of talent at the wide receiver position. But in a lot of other position groups, the offense should be pretty solid. So we will see how they're able to improve, at least at the wide receiver position this season, with a more talented quarterback.
Yeah, and it'll be the second year at the helm for Freeman. Brady Quinn has come out and said, listen, it's college football playoff or bust here, Jess. So what needs to happen in order for you to consider this season a success for Notre Dame? A 10-win campaign, is that got to be it?
I think 10 wins, realistically, I think 10 wins is good for any team in college football, especially a team that's playing like they need to beat all of the teams that are ranked below them in this preseason AP poll. They can't stand to lose to a Marshall like they did last season or a Stanford like they did last season. They need to be able to win all of those games and then hopefully at least win one against one of the 3 teams I just mentioned. And then if you win a bowl game on top of that, then that's 10 or 11 wins right there. I think that would be 10. I can't do math that fast, but you know what I mean? So I think, that college football playoff is the goal. National championship is always the goal, but it is Marcus Freeman's second year. And I think any sort of improvement in the wins category would be a great sign that he knows what he's doing. There are more talented recruits coming in behind this talented group that's already come in, and he's really being able to implement a system the way he wants to on both sides of the ball. So I think that would be, you won 9 last year. You can't win less than that this year.
No, for sure. What do you think the reason would be for Notre Dame not hitting 10 wins?
I mean, I think it comes down to Marcus Freeman has a year of experience under his belt, but there's still game situations that he hasn't had to face yet. And there's still times last year where Notre Dame looked very shaky, but were able to win. And those are the types of games that Brian Kelly, by the end of his tenure at Notre Dame, got really good at winning. The games where you're playing against a Toledo or something like that, and things are not going well, but you're ultimately able to pull through. And I think that happened a couple times last season. Marcus Freeman was not able to actually score the winning touchdown late in the game against Stanford. So you lose at home to one of the worst teams in college football. I think Stanford ended up finishing the season 3-9 last year. And no one talks about Stanford football anymore. They have very much fallen from grace from what they were 10 years ago. So that cannot happen. And so I think if they are to lose more than 3 or 4 games, it's going to be because they can't close out those types of games. I do think, last season, the win against Clemson at home was a huge momentum builder and led to what ultimately became not, an unsuccessful season, but one that I think Notre Dame fans think we can improve upon. So you got to win at least one of those games. And if not, don't lose to any of the unranked teams on your schedule, especially none of the unranked ACC teams. Because I think Notre Dame's wins record against ACC teams right now is 28 or 30 or something like that. You want to keep that going.
Especially a team like Navy, which this week, today, the Irish are literally home. They're playing Navy in Dublin, 20-point favorites here, Jess. We know that Notre Dame escaped with a mere 3-point victory last year. What are we going to see go down today?
I think the Navy game last year is a big lesson for this team because they came out really strong in the first half. Notre Dame was up by a couple touchdowns at halftime, and then they let Navy back in the game. And I think you cannot let any team back in the game in the fourth quarter, especially one like Navy that can wear you down. So I definitely prefer, as a Notre Dame fan, playing Navy the first week of the season versus late in November when, you don't have as much time to work on the triple option as you do now, but they definitely need to learn from last season and finish the game that they want to play and not let Navy back into it.
All right, let's see how much you really think Notre Dame has learned from their mistakes from last year. I need a prediction. So come the end of the regular season, are we going to be talking about the college football playoff here with the Fighting Irish, or are we looking at another Gator Bowl appearance, Jess?
I don't want to do what I did last year, which was Notre Dame's going to win every single game. I'm super confident. And then out of the gate, they lost 2 in a row to Ohio State and Marshall. But I do feel good about Sam Hartman, and I do feel good about Marcus Freeman. So, yeah, why not? Let's go for it. College football playoff or bust.
All right, for more Irish talk, tune into Golic and Smitty on Tuesdays on the DraftKings network, on the DraftKings YouTube channel. But that was way too much Irish love for me. We got to get into why this team is not going to be successful this season. You see right here, the win total is 8.5, so the no is too easy at -750 to miss the college football playoff. I'll go to the win totals right here. Notre Dame.
Welcome back to the Sweat, everybody.
This was a team that lost at home to Stanford, that lost at home to Marshall. They were a bad bounce losing at home to Cal. They only beat Navy at home by 3. They have to play at Ohio State, at Clemson. They have to play USC again. this team, I bet them under 9. I'll take a plus price on them under 8.5 because I don't trust them to beat some of the teams that they should beat easily along the way. So I get all the hype, huge upgrade with Sam Hartman at quarterback, but Notre Dame, to make the college football playoff, you can only have one loss on your schedule. You have to travel to Clemson and Ohio State, 2 teams that are going to win 11 or 12 games this season, in my opinion. You're already 10-2 off the bat there and eliminated from it, and I really think Notre Dame's going to play down to its competition like it did against Stanford, like it did against Marshall in some of those games, and wind up being an 8-4 team next season. So as it pertains to them, I'm going under. On the other side of the break, we're going to be back talking some golf with Jeff Ulrich and Emerson Latzia.
All right, back here live on a Saturday morning edition of The Sweat presented by DraftKings. We have reached the final 2 days of the PGA Tour season. Victor Hovland, Collin Morikawa, currently tied atop the leaderboard at the Tour Championship at East Lake in Atlanta. A 30-man field, so each player starting at various strokes under par based on where they sit in the FedEx Cup standings. It's a format my good friend, DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich, is not a huge fan of. He joins us now on The Sweat. So for anyone new watching here, Jeff, remind us again how you would fix this.
I mean, look, it's a 30-man event at the end of the year in the playoffs. The majors are all done. It's a pretty hard event to just go out and fix, right? I mean, it's always just going to be the sort of second fiddle. It's not going to be the biggest event of the PGA year. Not that many people care about the playoffs, but I do think that there's things that they need to do. The first thing the PGA needs to do is just embrace the fact that it's the playoffs, like the NHL and the NBA do. Just because you win the President's Cup in the NHL or you're the best team in the regular season in the NBA, you don't get awarded a handicap in the playoffs. Your handicap is like a seeding. You still got to win, 4 games of your series to move on. I really think that the PGA has a match play format that just is so it just works with the playoffs and what we think about playoffs in terms of major sports really well. Like, why not embrace it? So my strategy has always been mix in some stroke play at the start. If you want to give the starters a little bit of an advantage, like the guys who are high up, like Scheffler, Hovland, sure, maybe give them a little bit of an advantage. But after 2-3 rounds, move on to the match play format. And I'm going to take this one step further, Emerson. Ooh. This event needs to have a prime time heads-up match play final on Thursday, prime time. Before football starts, you work it down to the semifinals on Sunday. You get the top 2. Next Thursday, you play a match play for $10 million, $5 million, whatever FedEx is sponsoring it for, and you get a prime time heads-up matchup on primetime TV for $10 million between 2 people. People would tune into that. There's no football yet. They would bet on it as well. So PGA Tour, that's what we need. We need a prime time heads-up matchup for a ton of money to end your year, and you'll get more eyes and you get more people betting it as well, which is always fun. So.
Well, Jeff, what certainly helps even the playing field is when the leader who starts at 10 under implodes, kind of like Scotty Scheffler did on Thursday. And you had a funny tweet that pointed out, despite being the best in the world in pretty much everything, the man turns into Stevie Wonder on the greens. Tons of Instagram meme pages are picking up your tweet now as well. So congratulations on the recent success here. We can't trust this dude with the short stick, Jeff. He did bounce back with a 65 yesterday. So how do you approach betting him right now?
I mean, yeah, Scheffler's pretty hard to trust in this format right now. He's obviously a couple strokes behind the Victor Hovland and Collin Morikawa. And now Hovland, obviously someone who's figured it out with the mid-range. And look, I mean, Scotty Scheffler really is hitting it at a historic rate. Let's just talk about him for a second. I mean, you have to understand, if Scotty Scheffler wasn't hitting the ball as well as he was, he might not have even made East Lake. That's how poorly he's putting it this year. He's 146th in strokes gained putting. Here's a list of players who are ahead of him in the putting stats this year. Martin Traynor, Kevin Chappell, Eric Van Rooyen. Eric Van Rooyen has missed 20 cuts in a row this year. James Hahn, Tyson Alexander, Doug Gim. They're all in front of Scotty Scheffler in strokes gained putting. If you've never heard of any of those players, yeah, that's why. So it gives you an idea of how well Scotty is actually hitting the ball. But if his long game, if his strokes gained tee to green game just goes down a little bit, the putter is never going to save Scotty Scheffler, and the putter is probably not going to get him back in contention this week. He almost needs Victor Hovland or Collin Morikawa to come back to him now. So that's the concern with Scheffler. It's pretty hard to target him at this point. Maybe the chasing mentality will spark him for a round or two. I could see that happening. But he certainly regressed with the ball striking a little bit in round 1. Didn't putt it well in round 1 either because he lost 2.9 strokes putting. Yeah. But it's a tough spot now because he's got 2 guys who are actually putting it better, especially even Morikawa, who used to be in the same kind of boat, but he's actually started to putt better. He switched grips. So, yeah, it's a tough spot to back Scotty Scheffler at the moment.
I mean, how confident does Collin Morikawa look right now, Jeff? Because in reality, it really was the worst season that I think he's experienced since turning professional. So he had 0 wins, just 5 top 10 finishes. But he has seemingly found his best game really at the perfect time. Don't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny. Like Colin Morikawa's worst season is that he had like a playoff loss, like another runner-up. Like he still had like a pretty good year. I mean, he was at Eastlake, right? Like he qualified as one of the top 30 players on the PGA Tour. So his worst season, and it definitely was his worst season. Like he was inconsistent for him. Still like puts him in the top 20 players on the PGA Tour, which is really insane to think about. That's how high-end his approach game is, though. And as I mentioned with Morikawa, he has really kind of figured out a little bit of consistency on the greens. That's the difference between him and Scheffler at the moment, where Morikawa can step up and shoot these 61s because he can get that mid-range putter going. So it's a tough spot for him. This is part of the reason why I hate this event. Colin Morikawa is 15 under through 2 rounds on a tougher like par 70. And you know what? He's only tied for the lead right now. Or excuse me, he's tied with Hovland. Tied for the lead with Viktor Hovland right now, who, you know, is still playing well, but I mean, Viktor Hovland's only shot 8 under. So in a normal event, Colin Morikawa would have a 7-stroke lead over Viktor Hovland. That's pretty insane. So it's going to be interesting to see if Morikawa can keep this up. It's really tough. I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a mental thing. He was obviously in the chaser's mentality. Now he's kind of in this like mano a mano thing, and you know, does Hovland have the advantage now? I would say yes. So, but great start for Colin Morikawa. Certainly a player who, you know, if he gets back to form, I mean, we're not going to have a big 3 anymore. We're going to have like a big 4 or 5 with him and Hovland as well.
Yeah, and Hovland birdieing 5 of his last 6 holes. Sounds like between the two, you'd prefer Hovland. Between the two who are tied atop the leaderboard, you'd prefer Hovland over Morikawa.
You know, you asked me this question a year and a half ago. I would have said, as much as I like Vic, I fully expect Colin Morikawa to eat his lunch in this spot. That's just how good Colin Morikawa was. He's already got 2 major wins. He obviously had turned himself. He is like one of the best, if not the best, just pure iron player in the world. But, you know, the tables have turned. Viktor Hovland has started to just become a force on the greens. He's just a really good mid-range putter. And because his tee to green game is so good, and he's almost as good on approach as Morikawa, he gives himself a ton of mid-range birdie putts. And we saw when he starts sinking them, man, like magic happens. So Viktor Hovland at plus 190 versus Colin Morikawa plus 260. I will actually take the shorter number on Viktor Hovland. I think that even at plus 190 right now, you know, he's getting a little bit disrespected. He's not getting the same respect that, say, like a Jon Rahm or a Scottie Scheffler would get if they were in this position leading. So, yeah, I do like Viktor Hovland. I just think it's going to be hard for Colin Morikawa to keep this up for 2 more rounds. I think mentally, Hovland's got to be feeling a little bit better, bouncing back and getting back in the lead. And you know, we've seen Colin Morikawa struggle to close out tournaments this year too, so that concerns me a bit. Hovland's obviously already closed out 2. I think it's a big spot for him. I think plus 190 really isn't that bad a number either.
All right, Jeff, bets on the board for winner here. Where's the value, or is that not really necessarily a thing anymore at this point?
So, I mean, no, the value is always a thing. Like, even if you're taking a shorter number, I mean, like when you're betting, I mean, that should be your be all end all. Is this a good number? And like I said, with Viktor Hovland was plus 600 to start this event, to be the winner with the handicap format. He's down to plus 190 now, but I mean, he's only been chopped in 1/3 here. He's leading the event. You know, he's got a couple stroke lead over Scottie Scheffler. Now, like I said, I think that he's still being slightly undervalued at plus 190. I really do. I think if this was Rahm, we'd see a number closer to plus 100. So I do like Viktor Hovland, but I will say the guy I just mentioned, Jon Rahm, is plus 1100. Jon Rahm gained over 2 strokes on approach in his last round. If there's another player here who could go absolutely nuts on this course and shoot a 61, it would definitely be Jon Rahm, and I do not hate that number at all. So if you're looking, maybe you already have some Hovland exposure, maybe you just want to take a bigger number because, hey, you don't want to invest much. I think Jon Rahm at plus 1100 is very, very doable. I mean, he is a player who can make up 4 strokes in a round. We saw him in the first event of the year, go nuts and make up like a massive deficit over Colin Morikawa. We're basically in the same situation, except it's only 4 strokes this time. So I think the plus 1100 on Rahm is actually very, very interesting, and that's where I would go. Okay. I don't think I would go any further back if we're going to include the starting strokes. We've just got 4 elite players in the lead right now, and to think someone like Tyrrell Hatton or even Keegan Bradley, who's not even that far back, is somehow going to take down these 4. That's a tough scenario for me to see.
All right, we got about a minute to go in this segment, so quick on this one, Jeff. I know you mentioned to me yesterday you like a bet in the matchups prop here on the DraftKings Sportsbook? Does something stand out to you there?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's some really good props. I mean, I'm going to run through them since we only got a minute here, but certainly for matchups, Jordan Spieth versus Siwoo Kim. Siwoo Kim is just absolutely lost on the greens right now. I know Spieth hasn't started well, but really Spieth just had a terrible round with his driver in round 2. I think he'll bounce back. It's minus 130. I don't necessarily love that, but I really like fading Siwoo Kim right now. That was the matchup that stuck out to me. Lowest round score prop, Jon Rahm at plus 1,200. That's something else to look for. Again, he gained big time on approach, in round 2. I think Jon Rahm goes low today. Player round props to look at. Sam Burns under 68.5, Jon Rahm under 67.5, Taylor Moore over 69.5. I cannot believe with how bad Taylor Moore is playing, we're only getting 69.5. So those are some round props to look at too.
All right, Jeff, thanks very much, man. We appreciate it. One final break to go, one final block to go. We're going cover to cover on the DK Sportsbook next. All right, back here for our final block of this Saturday edition of The Sweat. New show. We are bringing all you guys and gals every weekend now live on DraftKings Network. And for our friends out watching us in the desert on VSiN, Steve Buchanan, Julian Edlow, I am Emerson Lotzi. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us here today on this historic episode of The Sweat. How you guys feeling right now, man? Huh?
Sweaty.
Feeling good? You are quite moist, I will tell you that. So we're going to do cover to cover to wrap up our final segment here on the show. We'll start with, so this is kind of when we just poke over to the DK Sportsbook and we kind of rip through anything and everything there, kind of like you do when you read a book, cover to cover. NFL hidden bets right now, Jules. What can you find for us? Maybe a hidden jewel.
That used to be a segment of mine.
Yeah, it wasn't very successful, why we got rid of it.
It's still around. The graphic lives somewhere. Billy actually made it. He's behind the camera.
Great job, Bill. There it is! History!
Boom!
Let's
Told
go!
You. There I am. I feel like my face is slimmer than that, but all right. Let's get it. Scoring specials, right?
Yeah, sure. Whatever really you want to focus on and bring attention to for our viewers, again, watching on DraftKings Network and VSiN.
All right, so I think we're highlighting the total amount of points in the NFL this season is one of the ones that we're going to look at. I like it under. I don't know why the total is necessarily set so high. The scoring went down in the NFL last year by a pretty wide margin.
Oh, man, you're right. Almost like 1,000 points, it looks like.
Right. 1,000 points scoring went down, and now the total's set back up where it was a couple years ago. I'm not projecting it goes down another 1,000 points, but I think the bounce back for it is not there. So I think that things are going to be played similarly. Defense is coming back a little bit. I know how frustrating it is on defenses with the penalties and the flags, but I think the game is becoming a little bit easier defensively. So I think that scoring should stay put, which would be a pretty easy under.
I mean, Bukes, as we sit there and we bring attention to everything that is available on the DraftKings Sportsbook right now, 2021, though, was a year where this point total was eclipsed, but just about by 7 points. So you had 12,502 in 2021.
I mean, it's kind of, it is very good math. I mean, it's kind of a crazy bet to think about here. I mean, you literally have to be tallying this after every single week to try to keep track.
That's what I do. I sit there with a notebook.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're going through the newspapers. We're checking the box scores like we're in the 80s or something.
Yeah, I was thinking like 90s. Or
90s, yeah, you could say that too. But, I mean, I think there's a lot of good offensive teams, and a lot of teams are going to be opening up the offense this coming year. We talked about the Chargers earlier. Will the Patriots be able to do that with their new offensive coordinator too as well? So we could see a lot more higher scoring teams this coming year. So I would be on the side of the over in this one here, especially too with him. We're going to talk about this, I think, in the second here. The amount of overtime games too that we've seen in the past couple of years.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let's just tackle it right now. 19.5. How many overtime games will there be? Last season, featured 20 of them?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
So 20 last year, 21 last year. So we've been kind of in that range. So that's obviously a number that we
Wait, you said 20 last year, 21
I believe he means
year.
the year before.
Year before. Yeah,
that's fine.
you.
Well, Jules,
it's a 2-hour show.
I like to make fun of people when they...
This is the earliest we've ever been up.
It's true. I'll give him a
And
break.
we were having issues with the touchscreen. I couldn't even get the
You
same
had issues with the
parlay over.
touchscreen. I did fine.
But you handled yourself like a professional
Thank you
during
very
that
much.
segment. I want to give you that, which put a lot of pressure on him. So you're thinking over 19.5 overtime games.
I mean, again, there's no real stats that say, the trend is going to be this one here. But I do think, at least from what we've seen in the past years, again, too, talking about some of the higher scoring teams kind of coming up in this year, I do think the over is a play in this one.
Jules, the NFL added an overtime period in 1974 to resolve regular season games.
Oh. Thank you for the history lesson there that will make bettors nothing. All right, I think, this has gone 20-plus 2 years in a row, like Steve said. There's a reason this is juice minus 135 to the under, I think. I think that's the side. I would rather lay the juice and go under. There's 18 weeks of the regular season. One a week feels a little strong. This is more than one a week, obviously. So I will go under and say that we have some regression in overtime games and don't care at all about the history of when it was invented.
I will say, though,
Yes,
out of
say it.
everything on DraftKings Sportsbook that you can bet, this is probably not one I recommend going.
Well,
This is my least strong take of the show. If you're going to bet anything that Steve and I said, this is not the one.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk a little more NFL here because there is a league leaders tab in the NFL department on DraftKings Sportsbook. So who could lead passing yards? Patrick Mahomes is the favorite there. Let's see, he's the favorite for most passing touchdowns.
Yeah.
There's rushing yards. You could go anywhere you want here. Is there a certain individual you're focusing on?
Well, you just mentioned a bunch of positive ones. Who's going to be the best at certain
Yes.
things, Emerson? As you know, I'm more of a negative guy.
You
Who's going to
really
be the
are.
worst?
He is very
Anthony
negative.
Richardson, number 4 overall pick with the Colts, 18-1 to lead the league in interceptions.
Oh!
This is a guy I don't think he deserves the starting job. I don't want to say deserves. I don't think he should be starting. The Colts should be grooming him the way the 2 quarterbacks that played in the Super Bowl last year, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, they learned on the bench from veterans.
So you're saying go to Gardner Minshew right now.
Anthony Richardson needs that grooming, but they're going to throw him into the fire, and then you can't bench him, right? That takes the confidence away. You're putting him out there because he only played 1 season at Florida, and you want to get him reps. He threw an interception on his first pass of the preseason. He's completing 44% of his passes. He's an elite athlete, but he's really going to struggle early. 18-1 to lead the league in interceptions.
All right, Bukes, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Justin Herbert to lead the league in passing yards is at plus 650. He's the second favorite behind Patrick Mahomes. So we talked about this on the show earlier. If you watched this whole 2-hour episode, thank you very much, by the way.
Yeah.
But obviously with the new offensive coordinator in the mix, they got 3 legit receivers, and that's not even counting what Austin Eckler can do through the air as well. So with all that in mind, obviously injuries are concerned here with the Chargers. Mike Williams is somebody that we've seen go down numerous times throughout the season. But I like what they've done with this offense. They're really trying to open up Justin Herbert this season, and I think that's what we're really going to see throughout the year. Yeah. So for him to lead the league in passing yards at plus 650, that's a really solid number for him.
Yeah, and those injuries to his targets is probably a reason why he's a little further down the board when it comes to most passing touchdowns, right, Jules?
Yeah, I would agree. Herbert's going to be a yards guy. He's been a yards guy, and then you mix in the new system, the depth they have at receiver, it all adds up.
As we continue to go cover to cover here, NBA schedule was released like this past week here, Jules. Is there anything you are looking at currently on this schedule?
Yeah, so unlike football, with college football and the NFL, I don't mind looking down the line a little bit and playing a game. You can't do that in the NBA these days. So I'm looking at the 2 opening nights, the Tuesday and Wednesday in late October when the season begins. The first night, the Warriors are minus 118 on the money line, hosting the Suns. Suns obviously a lot of hype now with the Durant, Booker, Beal trio. Not much depth behind it, and they're going to have to find some chemistry with that unit. Not to mention they're going to Golden State, where Chris Paul is now on the roster. A little bit of a revenge narrative for Chris Paul. And the rest of that team, just all the experience that they have and playing at home in that game. I think that should be a game early in the season where the Warriors look very organized and the Suns are maybe still figuring things out. And then the same thing on the second night. It's close to a pick'em line. Celtics are minus 125. They're on the road at New York. This is a team that over the course of the season, with Porzingis in for Smart, I think they're going to have some injury issues. They are at some point, but I'm trusting them to start the season healthy. And if they do that, you got the Porzingis revenge game back in New York, and you've got a Celtics team that should be playing healthy, ready to go out of the gates. I think that's a short number for the Celtics in New York on the second night of the NBA season.
Conference seeding here, Celtics over under 2.5. Where would you go?
Ooh,
yeah, that's a good one, number. Right? Over 2.5 plus 125, under 2.5 minus 155.
I see. I would go under. I think even if they don't get the 1 seed, they'll probably be 2, like they've been in consecutive years. But 155 is tough. I'll say for a future, what I did play is the Raptors under 36.5 wins. I believe that's minus 120 on DraftKings Sportsbook. You lose Fred VanVleet to Houston. You're close to losing Pascal Siakam at some point. He's the name that is kind of next to go there. And then you turn it over to some of those young players like a Scotty Barnes. So I think that the Raptors, in a strong Eastern Conference, losing one of their best players, due for some regression.
What baseball have we missed here, Bukes? I know we'll talk a lot more about season-long win totals on tomorrow's show.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, if you want to play for tonight, I like Athletics and the White Sox to go over 9 runs here tonight. Even though the White Sox have been absolutely abysmal this entire season, they're still a really strong team against lefties. We talked about how good Luis Robert has been. Like Eloy Jimenez has been very strong against lefties. Tim Anderson, who's having one of the worst seasons probably physically and mentally, is starting to come around on lefties too as well. I've been batting him leadoff lately. And then Touki Toussaint going up against the Athletics. You know, don't knock the Athletics. They actually do have some decent offensive nights. They absolutely put up some crooked numbers last night against the White Sox, and Tucson going up against the Athletics. Not a great matchup for him, so I think this is actually a decent spot to go over that game total here tonight, over 9 runs. You're getting that at -122 on DraftKings Sportsbook tonight.
And real quick, just looking at the NL MVP odds here on the DraftKings Sportsbook. Ronald Acuna Jr. -300. Any other player +235. I saw Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman's numbers last night. They punched it up on Apple TV Plus, and it was like, oh my God, they actually have very similar season-long stats.
This is actually, I think, a lot closer than most people think. So at +235, I think it's actually a decent number because Betts, Freeman, and Olsen all in the mix there.
All right, good stuff. Gentlemen, that is a show. We are going to do it again tomorrow morning, live on DraftKings Network and VSiN, 8 o'clock Eastern Time to 10 o'clock Eastern Time. We will talk a lot more NFL, baseball, basketball, all that good stuff. We will see you then.